Good evening. This is MJ from Linus Publications, and I had wanted to do a video last night about the decisions that will be coming down this morning. And when I did the chart, I sort of said, okay, no, I don't think we're going here. No, this can wait. It's not great news. So let's talk about what I saw last night. And just to give you a little background, when I did a similar chart when Trump was making his decision as to whether or not to attack Iran. And I said, you know, there's a chance here to sort of move past our old patterns and our old ways of doing things and to grow and evolve. In that case, I was hoping he would grow and evolve, but he didn't. And sometimes this is what happens with some of these configurations. They're meant to sort of put us, I don't want to say in a loop, but sometimes we just don't move out of them. Now, he had that configuration, and it turned out that that configuration on him, rather than the one that was going to be happening to the states, was the one that preempted, that started that move to the attack on Iran. So what do we have now? Since that already happened, well, we have the configuration happening to the United States. And so what has been attacked? Pretty much our rule of law. And let's talk about what's involved here. We've got our south and our north nodes. And what they're doing is they're squaring Mars. And I had noted this and said, okay, the old patterns, and it was also affecting Trump. So, with Trump involved, I said, oh, he's going to just sort of go back into what he knows. But I was hoping, that maybe the courts would sort of step up and not fall back into an old familiar pattern, but they didn't. And I didn't think they would when I saw this last night, because it's very karmic. So what happened is that the south node is where we give out. And then we have the north node where we take in. When that's squaring Mars, it's like, okay, we're at a crossroad here. And like I said, sometimes depending on the nature, you can sort of figure out which way it's going to go. You can hope, but sometimes it doesn't go that way. When they made the decision, and it wasn't specifically on birthright, that actually got sent back to a lower court. But what they did make a decision on was the power of the judges. And in this case, they said, well, maybe lower court judges shouldn't be able to stop an executive order across the whole United States. Maybe it should only affect where the lawsuit is coming from. And someone better versed in law can explain the whole thing much better than I can. But this is really a step back for the legal system from my respect, considering who we're dealing with as an executive that's trying to take too much power. In this case, we have the court saying, sure, why not? Take more. And they're not trying to put a wall up to stop that. And what's one of the reasons for that? South node, where you give out, is going through the house of the legal system, the legal processes. So that's really important. So that's showing that, maybe we've been relying on the courts to be sort of like the block for what the executive's going to do. And maybe we shouldn't rely on that. Because this is an indication that for quite a while now, we're not going to see the court system probably standing up very well. For how long? Well, typically the nodes take about 2.5 years to get through a house, about that. So that's a long time. Okay? Now, what is one good thing I see from here? The north node, which is where we take in, is actually moved into the third house. And by the way, all the planets move in the direction, in effect, this way. The nodes move this way. What's the third house? It's freedom of speech. So we've counted on Congress to do the right thing. We've counted on judges and the legal system to do the right thing. Maybe it's going to come down to the people to do the right thing, and to do it by giving voice to what they are seeing and to what they want, and to stop, in effect, the just grabbing of people off the street and hauling them into court. Now, I do want to note that there were other things that were giving me an indication that we would be having this issue. We had Uranus way back in January. I noted that it was going to be squaring the moon. Well, what's the moon? Moon is home, security, also babies, motherhood. Now, in this case, what we have is that it didn't so much go after abortion, except it did in trying to limit Medicaid being used to fund things like Planned Parenthood. So we did have that, even though Uranus is sort of moving away from that square, which is a square tense angle. But what it did do is it brought up the fact that illegals, or even legals, are losing their homes. So it really is an outright attack on people in the United States. And they're changing the status of people. Where they have been okay, they change the status so they can pick them up and deport them. Pick them up and throw them in jail. For no reason are they changing the status. These people have been in court, they have been going to judges, they have been going through the process. But ICE is now just literally picking up people and throwing them in jail. I want to note that reason that children are involved in the birthright is that the nodes are actually square to Mars. Mars is the ruler of the fifth house. Fifth house in a normal chart is children. So when a person's child will be children, things you like, things you're fond of. But it's also, in a state chart, the states. So what we have here is we have the legal system that's going to be allowing the states to lose their power. Just like what happened in California with the National Guard. Some of these militias are literally the states. It doesn't belong to the government. So they're starting to now attack the power of the states. And that's something we need to watch. I would hope the states will be able to bring up enough resistance, but they're going to be losing it. So it's going to be left to the people's voice. Now, I know this is a somewhat boring analysis, but it sort of gives you an idea that, maybe we're looking for salvation in the wrong places. Something could still happen. I'm looking at around the July 5th time frame. It's that July 5, not 4th, 5th. So we'll see if something comes down around that time. But in general, Trump may get sick, but a lot of the stuff that's already set in motion doesn't go away, even if he's not here. And don't think it will. So we've got, a pretty full agenda of trying to get, our freedoms back. And, no one wants to have, criminals, illegals coming across the border. But no one, I would hope, wants to have mothers with little kids literally picked up and thrown in jail for not, for no crime whatsoever. They're people, So hopefully you have a good evening. And thank you for watching. Bye now.